This is Arkansas. Most of the country decided a long time ago there was nothing here worth stopping for. They're wrong. And the proof is buried all over the state. Drop beneath the surface of one of its northern lakes and you'll find a pyramid down there. A real one. Built a century ago by a man convinced the world was ending, meant to seal away the story of his century for whoever survived. Then the valley was dammed and it all went under. The pyramid, the grand hotels around it, the streets, even the graves, dug up and carried to higher ground before the water came. Most years the lake keeps it hidden. But a hard drought pulls the water down, and the ruins rise back into the light for a few weeks before they're swallowed again. That's the kind of secret this state keeps. In the hills nearby, water still comes up out of the ground warm. 4,000 years into a journey that began before the pyramids of Egypt. And near the old western edge of the state stood a town so lawless that one judge hanged men by the dozen, until the town, sickened by what it had become, tore down its own gallows and burned them. The rest of the country never knew any of it was here. Flyover country, they call it. Nothing to see. The people who stayed know every buried piece of it, and they've never needed you to believe them. By the end, you'll wonder how a place this strange stayed a secret this long. On a bluff above the Arkansas River, a town once stood where two worlds pressed against each other so tightly that law itself felt uncertain. Fort Smith National Historic Site marks that uneasy edge where American expansion met Indian territory, and every crossing carried risk. There, army orders, tribal law, and frontier custom all met, creating a town that felt federal on one street and frontier on the next. Soldiers, traders, and native families moved through the same streets, each living by different rules just a few miles apart. Today, the site preserves its past with the first fort's foundations, the 1838 commissary, Judge Parker's courtroom, the Hell on the Border jail, a reconstructed gallows, and river trails. Far from this once violent border, another town now gathers for a different purpose, where fresh harvests and handmade goods bring people together in the Bentonville Farmers Market. Every Saturday morning, it opens as stalls fill with just picked tomatoes, sweet corn, pasture-raised eggs, warm bread, raw honey, and jars of small batch jam. Beyond the produce, makers lay out hand-poured candles, woodcraft, soap and fresh-cut flowers, turning the square into a mix of farm and workshop. This is a producer-only market, so every tomato, loaf of bread, and bar of soap has to be grown, baked, or made by the person standing behind the table. As the town around it grows fast, the market keeps its sense of community, where familiar vendors greet returning customers, and conversations matter as much as the shopping. Children sample slices of fruit, while farmers explain how weather, soil, and timing can change the taste from one week to the next. On rainy mornings, vendors share tents and tarps to keep neighbours dry, and shoppers joke that buying tomatoes in a downpour means you've earned your market haul. The market has become so strong that it now ranks among the top farmers' markets in the entire United States, earning national awards usually reserved for big city scenes. Beyond these stalls, the city of Bentonville itself shows how a small farm town grew into something far larger without letting go of its roots. The boom really took off when a homegrown store chain in town grew into a giant company, pulling in suppliers, workers, and new families from all over the country. Here, sleek office towers and global headquarters stand just a short walk from porches, shade trees, and a square that still feels owned by the neighbours. On some mornings, cyclists in bright gear glide past farm trucks and strollers, as if 3 different Bentonvilles agreed to share one street. Big company money pays for trails, parks, and art, yet parades, school nights, and backyard cookouts still do the real work of pulling people together. Someone here can close a laptop after a global meeting and minutes later swap stories with a neighbour over sweet tea at a small town festival. When screens and streets feel a bit too much, many people point their cars toward cool blue water and wooded hills, where Beaver Lake waits just beyond the city's edge. Beaver Dam holds back the White River to create Beaver Lake, a man-made reservoir that now supplies drinking water, flood control, power, and playtime for northwest Arkansas. The dam is a massive concrete and earth wall anchored into limestone, tall enough and strong enough to turn old river valleys into one long stretch of lake. Beneath that calm surface lie old roads, fences and farm fields, now turned into underwater paths only divers and long-time locals can still picture. Families tell how front yards and church steps sit under the waves and some say they can still point to where a living room once looked out over dry ground. What sounded like an ending became a restart, as people who lost pasture and hayfields switched to guiding boats, renting cabins, and running marinas. The same water that covered barns and orchards now brings in a new kind of harvest: fish, campers, and summer crowds that keep lakeside towns busy. At dawn, quiet coves seem empty until sleek river otters slip beneath the glassy surface, weaving through logs and rocks in search of prey. Here, these swimmers bend like living commas, folding their bodies to twist between flooded tree trunks where slower fish have nowhere to hide. They can stay under long enough to patrol a whole tangle of branches in one go, then pop up with a fish in their teeth, as if they just played and somehow won a snack. Their fur works like a tiny wetsuit, trapping a thin layer of air close to the skin, so they stay warm even when the water feels too cold for human toes. Family groups often hunt and travel together, so one ripple on the water can suddenly turn into a splashy parade of tails, whiskers, and soft chirping calls. River otters often groom together on land, rolling, rubbing, and nibbling at each other's fur to keep it clean, fluffy, and full of tiny air pockets that work like built-in life jackets. They usually sleep on land instead of in the water, curling up in grassy spots on muddy banks or inside cosy dens, sometimes piling together like a furry, snoring log. On some mornings, people in quiet fishing boats watch an otter climb onto a log, roll around like a kid on a slip and slide, then vanish back under as the serious hunt begins again. As these playful hunters melt back into the flooded timber, Beaver Lake reveals something stranger still along its shore: the half-drowned ruins of Montine. Once a grand resort with giant log hotels and its own amphitheatre, it is now an underwater ghost town that only peeks out when the lake drops. In rare dry years, visitors can walk down the cracked steps of that amphitheatre, knowing that in wetter seasons, the same seats are used only by fish and divers. Most of the old streets now lie underwater near Rogers, but broken foundations, chimneys and walls still appear along the shore, like clues from a town the lake tried to erase. The ruins point toward Eagle Hollow, a sidearm of Beaver Lake where former ridges now hide beneath the surface, and only their tops form tight, wooded coves. From above, the hollow looks like a flooded staircase, with Ozark hills dropping so fast into the lake that one step off the bank can mean an instant plunge into cold water. On calm days, the surface turns smooth as glass, so even a small splash from a paddle or a jumping fish feels loud enough to wake the valley. When the lake runs low, old rocks and fence posts poke out along the shore, as if the drowned ground is trying to take one quick breath. Storm winds can funnel between the hills and flip the mood in minutes, stacking short, choppy waves against the cliffs where it seemed calm a moment before. Clear mornings draw anglers into these coves, dropping lines only a few feet from the rocks and reaching open water almost at once. Some animals leave clear signatures here too, with chewed stumps, dragged branches, and small dams that reshape the shoreline. Follow those tooth marks and muddy slides along the bank, and they lead straight to the tireless engineers behind all this construction, the Beavers. Their most important adaptation is a pair of iron-hardened orange front teeth that never stop growing, so they always seem to be chewing on something. Around the lake, they transform thin streams into a chain of calm pools by stacking sticks, mud and stones until the current slows to a gentle crawl. A lodge may look like a messy pile from the outside, but inside it holds dry rooms, sleeping spaces, and secret underwater doorways that land predators cannot reach. During spring and summer, they feed on soft plants like grass and leaves, then switch to tree bark and the sweet inner layer called cambium through fall and winter. Youngsters practice by hauling small branches and patting mud into leaks, like rookie builders, copying every move from the older workers. Each dam does more than shelter one colony. It raises the water, creates new wetlands, and provides safe corners where ducks, frogs, and small fish find food and cover. Over time, one busy colony can reshape a plain valley into a maze of ponds and channels, where new plants grow thick and more wildlife quietly moves in. Where living ponds finally end, a different kind of past begins, written in cracked chimneys and worn tracks that mark the lost farming streets of East Calico ghost town. Stone foundations and sagging walls still outline homes, shops and barns, like a chalk sketch of a town that once crowded these Ozark hillsides. Nicknamed Pepper Sauce for the strong local moonshine once sold in its back alleys, this little district was known less for quiet farm life than for brawls, bootleg drinks and late-night trouble. When rail lines and highways shifted trade elsewhere, stores closed, families moved away, and it gradually turned from a busy neighbourhood into an empty ghost district. Rusted roofs and weed-filled lots mark the edge of human plans, then yield to a larger pattern of cliffs, trees and hollows that belong to Ozark National Forest. In these mountains, earlier households treated the woods like a full pantry, taking food, firewood, and cabin logs from slopes so steep a wagon could barely pass. Small clearings once held corn, gardens, and hog pens, each patch hacked out by hand, with neighbours swapping chores, tools, and stories instead of money. On cold nights, tales of panthers screaming on the ridges and strange lights across the hollows helped make sense of a place where help might be hours away. Even now, some people still cut their own firewood, hunt deer, and gather wild plants while keeping skills passed down on porches and around campfires alive. Many hiking routes today follow old mule tracks and wagon ruts, the same paths once used to haul timber, water, and news between scattered homes. One footpath ends on a narrow sandstone beak of rock that sticks far out over the forest, known as Whitaker Point or Hawksbill Crag. From that ledge, people stand above a drop so sheer that trees below look like broccoli florets, which is why this single rock shows up in photos and postcards all over Arkansas. After rain or in early spring, the view can include waterfalls spilling off nearby cliffs, so it feels as if the ledge is hanging in front of a moving wall of water and mist. This high, airy ledge is only half the Ozark puzzle. The other half waits underground, where Blanchard Springs Caverns twist through the hills in stone and shadow. Inside, water still drips and runs, slowly building sharp stalactites, rippled flowstone, and delicate crystals that look breakable but keep growing drop by drop. It sounds crazy, but this cave is alive in slow motion. Every hanging spike and stone curtain is just a tiny bit longer than it was a human lifetime ago. One chamber glows so pale and feels so still that guides call it the ghost room, thanks to a huge sheet of white flowstone that looks almost like frozen light. All that careful cave protection has a surface partner in Lake Weddington, a mountain lake where people once stacked rock and timber so future visitors could rest by the shore. The lake began as a Depression-era work project, with crews building a dam, stone cabins, and picnic shelters, so hard times would also leave behind a place to relax and cool off. Those cabins and rock pavilions now ring a calm pool of water where canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, and small fishing boats slide out instead of work skiffs. Trails circle the water and follow old access roads, now used by hikers, runners, birdwatchers, and kids on bikes. On warm weekends, the shoreline can feel like a small festival of grills, sand volleyball games, and splashing swimmers gathered around a lake that once lived only on planning sheets. Quieter days have their own pattern, with anglers watching bobbers from the bank while deer, turtles, and other lake-edge wildlife slip in and out of the trees. Dusk brings a quieter lake, and from the thickets at its edge comes the grey catbird's sharp mew, sounding more like a house pet than a wild bird. Once it has your attention, this songbird launches into long strings of notes, stitching together bits of other birds, frogs, and even odd clicks it hears around camps and yards. Its best trick is wild. The grey catbird can sing 2 notes at once, using different parts of its voice box, so it harmonises with itself like a one-bird duet. Instead of posing on treetops, it keeps low in vines and saplings, pacing through cover, while singing as if the shrubs themselves had learned to talk. The slate-grey feathers and black cap help it vanish into those shadows. So often the only clue is that strange mew from somewhere inside the tangle. During migration, these birds quietly link forests, lake edges, and distant wintering grounds, hopping along shrubby borders and creek lines like a chain of tiny rest stops. Their menu shifts with the season, from ants, beetles, and caterpillars in warmer months to berries and fruit later on, spreading seeds through the same woods where they hide. Yet the Ozark Hills hide an unlikely neighbour, Drumorg Castle, a stone giant styled after European fortresses, but built right into Arkansas forest. From the drive, it feels less like arriving at a house, and more like walking up to a film set, with towers, battlements, and tall arched windows rising out of the trees. Inside, thick walls, carved wood, and long halls meet modern comforts in a fairy tale fortress that functions as both a home and an elegant event venue. Weddings, concerts, and private gatherings fill the rooms on busy days, so violins, speeches, and camera crews now stand where armour and banners might appear in a storybook. As shade deepens under the trees and sound softens around the castle, the forest itself prepares to speak up again through one of its loudest voices, the barred owl. Its call sounds like someone chanting, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" turning a serious hunter into what feels like the wood's loud neighbour with a joke for a name. Here, barred owls favour big hardwood stands and swamps, where tall trunks provide nest holes, daytime roosts, and gym equipment for clumsy, branch-hopping young. The round dish of feathers on its face works like a built-in satellite dish, catching tiny noises so well it can pick out a mouse rustling leaves far below. Soft-edged wing feathers break up air turbulence, so the owl glides over a trail with almost no sound while its ears stay locked on the next snack. Instead of racing across open sky, it often waits on a branch, then drops fast onto mice, squirrels, frogs, snakes, or small birds that had no idea anything was above them. Mated pairs trade yells, hoots, and odd laughs, until a quiet patch of woods sounds like a noisy argument high in the canopy. By eating loads of rodents around fields and edges, they quietly help protect grain stores and gardens without anyone needing traps or poison. When the last call fades, another kind of call from this region returns. Bugles, drums, and shouted orders, now remembered at Pea Ridge National Military Park. This quiet ground once held one of the biggest Civil War clashes west of the Mississippi, a fight that helped lock Missouri into Union hands. Soldiers from far beyond Arkansas met here, including native units on both sides, turning local farms into a crossroads of clashing loyalties. Cannons still line the ridges, and old fence lines trace the battle, so walking or driving the loop can feel like stepping into a paused war. Battle lines and grave markers soon give ground to towering bluffs, quiet side valleys, and a river that still runs wild at the Buffalo National River. It winds between tall grey cliffs and wide gravel bars, With water so clear, you can often see fish cruising over the pale stones. Local people once fought plans for a concrete dam, arguing this clear, free-running water was part of their work, fun, and identity. Families here say they can read the river, guessing the day's weather from how quickly it slides past certain rocks and bars. At a famous horseshoe bend, the river sweeps in a wide curve around high grey walls, and some locals joke that this is where the buffalo itself turned back the dam idea. The winding channel also hides caves, sudden springs, and pop-up waterfalls after big storms, like secret doors that only open when the rain hits hard. Black bears, elk and otters share these banks, and paddlers often say the loudest sound all day is just water dripping from a canoe paddle. With water this lively and unpredictable, river outfitters guide families, anglers and first-timers through calm pools, small rapids and rocky shallows. Many are long-running family businesses, so advice on where to camp, fish or swim often comes with stories about wild seasons and surprise animal encounters on the buffalo. Long days on the water often end with boats sliding past seed-heavy weeds, where quick flashes of gold show American goldfinches feeding right beside tired paddlers. The male in breeding season looks like a flying lemon drop with black wings, while the female wears softer olive yellow, so together they are like tiny moving flags in the weeds. Instead of chasing bugs through the air, they cling to swaying stems and pluck seeds straight from plants, using a sharp little bill that works like tweezers. Their flight bounces like a roller coaster, with quick flaps and little dips, and their call sounds like they're saying, potato chip, as they follow the Buffalo River. Snakes, cats and hawks can all cause trouble, so goldfinches often stay in small groups and keep low in river edge plants, where their size and colour help them disappear fast. They're naturally wary of danger, but around quiet people they can seem almost friendly, calmly feeding just a few feet away if you stay still and gentle. In colder months they turn duller and roam widely in search of the best seed patches before bright breeding colours return in spring. As the birds return each year to the same open fields, they skim over foundations, rail lines and ore piles, breathing new life into the old bones of Rush Ghost Town. This quiet valley once roared with zinc mines, company houses, and a busy main street where people said you could almost hear money in the clatter of carts and boots. When the boom collapsed, families left fast, and today you can still see houses, a store, and other buildings standing like a frozen frame of small-town life. Visitors walk past sagging porches and rusted gear, and some talk about catching the faint ring of metal on rock on still evenings, as if the shift whistle never quite stopped. Old rail grades now feel like simple paths, yet a few steps off the trail can bring you to sudden drops and hidden mine cuts carved straight into the hillsides. Young trees and brush now weave through doorways and old streets, and the once busy mining camp has become perfect edge forest for chestnut-sided warblers. This small bird looks ready for a parade, with a yellow cap, white belly, greenish back, and rusty streaks down each side like someone ran a paintbrush along it. Instead of staying high in tall, dark woods, it chooses low, messy growth, hopping through saplings and brambles here as if it ordered the ghost town to grow just for it. Tiny insects are the main target, and it snaps them from leaves and twigs with quick moves, sometimes hanging upside down for a moment, like a feathered acrobat. During migration, it travels very far, yet still picks small, brushy patches like this, turning old mine roads and clearings into busy snack stops in spring and fall. Its song sounds like "Pleased, pleased, pleased to meet ya," a fast, rising whistle that can bounce off empty walls and broken windows like a cheerful hello from the trees. Sharp eyes and fast wings help it dodge hawks, snakes and sneaky cats, while the tangle of young trees and shrubs gives it plenty of hiding spots when danger shows up. Each year, some return to the same rough edges and sapling patches, stacking new life on top of rust, rail lines and stories left behind in the old camp. After a day of chasing tiny meals among saplings and thorns, the scene trades buzzing flies and leaf-hopping bugs for wind-blown spray and slickstone at hemmed-in hollow. Here, the water spills over a tall rock lip and just keeps dropping, forming one of the tallest waterfalls anywhere between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. Hike in on a dry week though, and you might find only a thin silver ribbon, or bare rock, so every visitor gambles on the weather to see if the falls will show up. While spray soaks the shaded floor and coats every leaf, life just beyond the cliffs runs on tractors, grazing cattle, and cutting hay in the broad flats of Boxley Valley. Old barns, low farmhouses, and narrow lanes here are no movie props. Some families still farm these bottomland fields much as their grandparents did, with tall bluffs as natural fence lines. These wide, grassy flats turned out to be perfect for more than crops and cows, and were picked as prime release ground for a long-lost neighbour returning to Arkansas, the elk. After more than a century of absence, the first release was a leap of faith, as nervous animals stepped from trailers into fields and river bottoms. The project works so well that now elk roam the area, their big bodies and tall antlers suddenly rising behind fences and hay bales, where people once expected only cattle. A herd is made up of females and calves with one or a few bulls nearby, and the animals drift like a slow-moving wave from one feeding area to the next. Even then, elk in Boxley Valley often stay in loose groups, standing close enough that many eyes and ears can watch for danger at once. Muscular bodies and sure feet let them handle steep Ozark hills as easily as flat ground. So one moment they fill a meadow, and the next they melt into timber as if the forest swallowed them. During autumn's breeding season, bulls may clash hard, locking antlers and pushing each other around like living battering rams. The collisions ring like wooden ladders slamming together, while the rivals rake shrubs and small trees to advertise their strength. Beyond the rut, elk here act like giant lawnmowers, clipping grass and weeds so neatly that some pastures look freshly trimmed after they pass through. Wildlife watching has become part of the local farm economy, with people travelling here just to see these animals, turning quiet fields into one of Arkansas's biggest wow shows on four legs. Not every animal here needed saving. Some are doing just fine on pure wits, and none more so than the masked little bandit poking around the campground after dark. Around here, raccoons use their front paws like small hands, patting along creek edges, under rocks, and inside old cans to find crayfish, insects, eggs, and leftovers. Even then, they often rub and roll objects like stones or bits of food in their front paws, sometimes in water, not to wash them but to feel them better with their super sensitive fingers. The black mask of fur is more than a costume. It cuts glare and sharpens night vision, and they become expert raiders of cornrows, picnic tables, and any cooler that is not locked. They're even smarter than they look. Tests show they remember tricky latches for years, so one clever raccoon can make a whole campground an escape room buffet. When it's time to rest, they choose snug shelters like tree cavities, hollow logs, rock crevices, and old burrows, creating cosy dens high in trunks or tucked underground. There, mothers often lead a noisy string of youngsters along fences and ditches, teaching safe paths to food and water in the riverwoods, like a parent walking kids along a familiar sidewalk. Thick fur and a ringed tail help them balance on logs and climb quickly, so if a dog charges, they can be up a tree or out over a creek before the chase really gets going. Back at the den, they spend plenty of time grooming, licking and combing their fur, while family members groom one another to keep both coats and social bonds strong. Trash, frogs, fallen corn, beetles, berries, very little goes to waste, and these adaptable foragers become four-legged cleanup crews, roaming farms, campgrounds and stream banks. Farther south, people found their own kind of comfort stop in Arkansas. Not with snacks by a creek, but with long soaks in steaming mineral pools at Hot Springs Resort City. Thermal water bubbling from the mountains was treated like liquid medicine, drawing crowds that filled the streets with bathhouses, hotels, doctors' offices, and shops. Taking the waters became a ritual, as guests checked into grand bathhouses for strict soak and steam routines that doubled as social gatherings. Hot Springs may have bathhouse blocks and bright signs, but Gilbert keeps things simple. One small grid of streets, a few porches, and a front row seat to the water sliding past. Before smooth highways, families here treated the water as a main road, using boats and later, railroad cars beside it to move timber, cotton and mail between scattered Ozark settlements. Kids grew up reading the current and gravel bars like traffic lights, knowing when the river could carry a load, strand a boat, or was better left for fishing. Meanwhile, another town farther north took a simple promise. These springs will help you feel better, and stacked hotels and houses up the slopes to form Eureka Springs. Stories of healing water spread so fast that a quiet hollow filled with boarding houses, doctors, streetcars, and visitors lining up to soak, sip, and hope for a cure. Steep hills force streets to bend and layer, so builders tucked shops under sidewalks, perched Victorian hotels on cliffs, and squeezed stairways between walls like secret passages. Even now, much of the town still revolves around that first promise, with inns, spas, and festivals inviting visitors to leave feeling healthier, looser, or simply more awake. From a nearby hilltop, the Christ of the Ozarks rises as a towering white figure with outstretched arms, smooth robes, and a simple face that gives it the look of a giant cutout against the sky. Downstream, faith in healing water turns into faith in hard work, as War Eagle Mill uses that same moving force to spin a giant wheel and crush corn and wheat into flour. For Ozark farm families, mills like this were once as important as any store, turning sacks of grain into the flour and cornmeal that fed homes across the hills. Inside, heavy stones still grind corn instead of metal rollers, giving the meal a coarse, nutty texture that many locals swear makes better cornbread and fried batter. Visitors can watch grain being milled, take home a fresh bag, then enjoy pancakes or pie made from the same meal. Belly full of cornbread and syrup, you leave the hum of grinding stone behind and head toward a very different kind of sound, the crash of falling water at Petit State Park. The park takes its name from a legend of a young French woman who disguised herself as a cabin boy called Petit, or Little John, to secretly follow her lover to the mountain. Legend says she fell ill after reaching the mountain and asked to be buried on the cliff she loved, where visitors still walk to a stone grave many believe is hers. Around that high point, canyons, stone arches, caves and waterfalls slice into the plateau, so exploring the park can feel like walking through a natural maze wrapped around one old legend. And in there, tiny brown creepers work the trees like winding toys, spiralling up the trunks in tight loops and poking their thin beaks into every crack for bugs. Each one looks like bark that learned to move, with a streaked brown back, pale underside, and a slim curved bill that matches the tree almost too well. Every climb is a snack mission, as it picks insects, spiders and eggs out of the bark, turning old trunks in Petit State Park into climbing buffets. Far below the tree climbers, Cedar Falls does its own kind of vertical run, a single tall drop that hits the canyon floor so hard it throws mist back into the air. On some days the spray hangs so thick that clothes get damp in moments, and kids shout like they've walked into a giant cold shower at the bottom of the mountain. After heavy rain, the calm pool can surge, rocks turn slick, and hikers pick their steps across Cedar Creek with care. Knowing this pretty spot can rough up a careless move. Once the roar drops to a steady hush, soft grass patches near the creek turn into feeding lanes, and a groundhog can step out of its burrow like its own fuzzy park ranger on patrol. Its body looks like a low, furry barrel on short legs, with a blunt nose, dark eyes, and powerful claws that work like shovels in meadows and rocky slopes. With those claws, one animal can dig an underground maze of tunnels, sleeping chambers, and multiple exits for a quick escape from foxes or coyotes. On calm days, it pops up like a furry periscope to check for danger, then drops to all fours to feed on nearby plants, flowers and fresh greens. All that grazing builds a blanket of winter fat, allowing the groundhog to curl up in its burrow and hibernate through the cold. Even better, the teeth have a special trick. They never stop growing, so constant chewing on tough stems and roots works like a built-in file to keep them the right length. Along the way, its digging helps loosen and mix the soil around here and the high river fields nearby. In a way, those burrows form a tiny town beneath the grass, much like the early communities people built above ground. That tiny grass-level town leads to Old Washington Historic State Park, where preserved streets, gardens, and working shops reveal how early settlers built their lives. It once worked like a frontier control hub, pulling wagon trains, merchants, lawyers, and teachers into one compact grid where big choices for southwest Arkansas were made. Inside the trade buildings, blacksmiths forged wagon parts and tools, while nearby, courts handled disputes, and travellers brought news from far beyond the state line. Today, you can walk past a courthouse, schoolhouse, tavern, and blacksmith shop in a single short loop, as if someone pressed pause on a working 19th century town. After courthouse steps and boardwalks, Siloam Springs feels like history, cooled by water, with old stone bridges, leafy banks, and a creek that threads past shops and porches. Brick storefronts, small parks, and narrow streets lean toward the water, and the town seems to walk in step with the Ozark Hills instead of rushing past them. On clear days, the historic district becomes an easy walking loop, with murals, shaded benches, and short bridges that keep pulling you back to the creek. Every spring, the Dogwood Festival turns that calm loop into a full-scale event, drawing tens of thousands of visitors and more than 200 vendors into downtown. Streets fill with art tents, food stalls and live music, and the old brick blocks suddenly feel like one big open-air market wrapped around the dogwood blooms. Families treat the weekend like a shared party, kids painting, parents shopping, friends meeting up, while the historic buildings frame every song and parade. Even with crowds moving and bands playing, it stays surprisingly easy to slip down to the water's edge and watch petals drift across the surface. All that motion still folds into one calm centre, and it keeps coming back to Saga Creek, the spring-fed ribbon of water that guides the town's parks, paths and slow walks. The creek runs straight through downtown like a main street made of water, lined with stone walls, small bridges, and grassy banks that turn into picnic spots and reading benches. On many mornings, ducks, songbirds, and people share a narrow corridor, with joggers and dog walkers using the paths while the creek keeps everything cool. Heavy rain can switch its mood fast, pushing the flow higher and louder and reminding the town that this clear little channel can carry real force. Nearby, John Brown University is crowned by the stone-built Cathedral of the Ozarks, rising above the town and campus like a tall bookmark in the hills. The school began as a small Christian campus more than a century ago and grew into a full university, with the cathedral becoming its main symbol for faith, learning, and big gatherings. Students and staff helped raise its Gothic-style towers and arched windows, so the building feels part chapel, part castle, and fully tied to the people who study and work there. On busy days, chapel bells mark class changes and meetings, turning that stone structure into a giant timekeeper that steadily sets the pace of campus life. The cathedral hosts worship services, concerts, lectures, and ceremonies, meaning its doors can open to prayer 1 hour and a packed music event the next. Generations of students have lined up on its steps for photos, and families often fold visits here into their own milestones, from first campus tours to graduation day. Campus tradition flows straight into Mountain View's rhythm, where preserving Ozark music, crafts and storytelling is just everyday life for a small town in the hills. The town treats old songs like heirlooms, with fiddles, banjos and homemade instruments passed through families so the music chain never breaks. Picking on the square keeps that promise simple, as musicians circle the courthouse lawn and storefronts to play folk music for anyone who wanders past. On busy evenings, several groups play at once, fast fiddle runs here, slow ballads there, and joining in rarely needs a ticket or a formal stage. The way people pass tunes hand to hand mirrors how the Whitaker River once passed people and goods across the state, acting as a moving road through valleys and wooded ridges. Long before cars and pavement-linked towns, steamboats carried timber, cotton and passengers along this river, where new communities grew, where there had been only woods and rock. As trade grew, mills, docks and rail spurs lined the banks, making once sleepy stretches into busy work zones that shaped towns across the Ozark Mountains. Engineering reshaped the river as Carpenter Dam harnessed its flow for hydropower, fueling hot springs growth into a regional centre. The concrete wall forced a sharp drop in the river, driving turbines that turn falling water into electricity for nearby streets, hotels and bathhouses. From the start, the project created construction jobs, then powered industry and tourism, helping build a stronger future for both workers and visitors. The river rushes through the dam's intake to feed the power grid, while calmer water beyond spreads into coves that feel more like a lakeside neighbourhood. On any map, the change is clear. A narrow channel gives way to a broad reservoir, with Carpenter Dam acting like a hinge point between river current and still water. That controlled flow created a different world upstream, Lake Hamilton, a broad reservoir lined with homes, marinas, and recreation, all born from the drive for hydropower. By summer, weekends turn the lake into moving traffic, pontoons cruising, jet skis cutting tight turns, and fishing boats slipping into coves after bass, crappie, and catfish. Beneath all that activity, fish, turtles, and cruising waterbirds treat the flooded valleys as one big feeding ground, weaving between pilings and shaded overhangs. Above them, the belted kingfisher claims posts and branches over the lake, watching for a flash of movement before dropping headfirst toward the water to grab its next fish. The bird looks like a stocky blue-grey hunter, with a big head, shaggy crest, and a thick pointed bill, plus a bold white band around its neck, and a darker belt across its chest. Most meals start with a stare down. It scans the river, then rockets off the perch, and spears fish close to the surface in one sharp splash. The strangest part comes next, when it returns to the perch and whacks the fish against the branch to stun it, before flipping it down in one smooth gulp. Even its home is unusual, because instead of nesting in trees, it digs long tunnels into soft riverbanks, where eggs and chicks stay hidden from predators. Far to the south, out in the flat cotton country, a small and ordinary-looking town gave the world one of its bravest voices. Stamps looks quiet from the highway, yet its dirt streets, porches, and corner stores shaped Maya Angelou's childhood and later turned into scenes read around the world. Through her autobiographical books, she used this town to show how children and families lived under segregation, while still holding onto humour, care, and dignity. Many readers recognise Stamps, the country store, Sunday church, and schoolyard, not because they've been there, but because her words make them feel real. That sense of place continues at Lake Sequoia, a wooded reservoir where calm shores and wildlife sit beside a fast-growing region. As Fayetteville spread with new roads and neighbourhoods, this lake stayed simple: ramps, trails and tree-lined banks where people still come to fish, paddle and share easy picnics. The water draws more than people. Herons, ducks, eagles and deer use the coves and nearby woods as safe side rooms, feeding and resting only a short drive from busy streets. On quiet mornings, small boats slide out among bird calls, and the city's rush feels far away, as if the Ozarks have stepped forward again for a few calm hours. Even the soft green edges can surprise with flashes of red, blue and yellow from painted buntings that sometimes visit brushy corners and turn the shoreline into moving confetti. They rarely stray far from cover, picking small seeds, berries and insects from low shrubs and grasses where they can feed without venturing into the open. Then the sound takes over, a bright, tumbling song pouring out from inside the bushes, as if the bird is putting on a concert while staying half hidden. From one hidden singer to another, the hooded warbler carries on the performance, darting through thick cover to pluck insects from shaded leaves. The black hood and bright yellow face flash on and off as it flicks its tail and hops through low tangles around the lake, like a tiny masked superhero chasing bugs. Instead of crossing open spaces, it makes short hops and quick turns to snatch spiders and insects from shaded leaves and branches, where the understory is an all-you-can-eat bug bar. Busy wings and snapping beaks give way to careful paws and silent climbs as the North American porcupine appears, its body covered in quills that warn predators, do not touch. Slow steps hide a strong climber, using sharp claws and a powerful tail to haul itself up tree trunks around Lake Sequoia and reach fresh leaves and twigs to chew. Instead of chasing prey, it spends long hours eating bark, leaves and stems, drawing the energy it needs to carry all that built-in armour. That armour is no bluff. Each quill works like a tiny barbed needle that sticks into an attacker's skin and keeps pushing deeper, so one bad bite can turn into a very big problem. As a result, most hunters learn to stay away, though a few bold predators still try for a risky meal by attacking from safer angles. From forests shaped by trees to a land shaped by rivers, Arkansas City sits in the Mississippi Delta, where river trade and farming have long shared the same fertile ground. Families along the river learn to read the water like a giant mood ring, knowing that high brown waves could mean busy boat days one season and ruined cotton rows the next. On still, foggy mornings, some locals say you can still hear old barge horns and work songs floating over the levees, as if past river crews refuse to fade away. The small-town rhythm of boats and cotton leads to Little Rock, a capital where courthouse steps, bridges and riverfront paths follow the flow of water and history. Rail lines, barges and highways all converge on this city, making it a meeting place where people from farm towns, hill country and pine woods come seeking new opportunities. Some families say that if you stand on a river bridge at dusk, you can hear three worlds at once: the roar of traffic, the soft slap of waves, and faint voices from old protest chants. Civil rights stories and everyday school memories share the streets, so a short walk downtown can feel like flipping through a living history book. Food carts and barbecue smoke fill the streets, bringing people in suits and muddy work boots to the sidewalk and the plate. On stormy nights, a few locals joke that the river lights blink in a special pattern, as if the city is winking at anyone awake enough to notice. Big choices in small meeting rooms ripple out to towns across the state, shaping how fields are farmed, schools operate, and local stories are told. Protests, meetings, and everyday work all meet at the Arkansas State Capitol building, where the state's biggest debates and decisions unfold beneath a shining dome. The whole structure was shaped to resemble the United States Capitol, so walking up its granite steps feels like entering a smaller cousin of the nation's main decision room. Inside, the halls, tall rotunda, and long corridors turn the building into a maze, and school groups often learn that finding the right room is the first challenge in following how laws are made. Another special detail is the building's huge interior chandelier in the rotunda, which is so heavy and high that lowering it for cleaning or repair becomes a rare event people come just to watch. Above it all, the cupola is covered in real gold leaf, so the dome catches light and shines even on dull days. On windy days, flags snap above the dome as people gather below for rallies and vigils, making the grounds an outdoor stage where big debates share space with handmade signs. At night, the lit dome glows over Little Rock like a giant lantern, as important talks may continue behind dark windows. Power in marble halls meets courage in brick hallways at Little Rock Central High School National Historic Site, where an ordinary school became a symbol of children standing up to unfair rules. During the desegregation crisis, 9 African American students, known as the Little Rock Nine, walked through those front doors to claim the equal education long denied to them. Civil rights marches and serious speeches share the city with weekend riders and dog walkers, many of them grinning as they say they're heading over the Big Dam Bridge. The longest purpose-built pedestrian and cycling bridge in North America arches over the river here, built only for feet and wheels, and proudly known as the Big Dam Bridge. Built for one job alone, the span carries walkers, runners and cyclists from bank to bank, so no cars, trucks or trains have ever rolled across its deck. High above the dam, the route offers a split view, with roaring white water on one side and a smoother river on the other, so every crossing feels like a moving nature show. The playful name gets a laugh, but it still pulls crowds for sunrise runs, sunset strolls, and big charity rides that turn the bridge into one long human parade. On windy days, leaning bikes, rattling strollers, and kids pointing down at the foaming spillway transform serious engineering into an open-air playground. Tired legs leave the bridge and find comfort in low smoke and hot grills, with ribs, chopped pork, and simple sandwiches tying river paths to old family recipes from across Arkansas. Here, barbecue works like a map you can eat, mixing sweet and tangy pork from the Delta with spicier Ozark touches, so one plate carries flavours from several corners of the state. Pitmasters often say the wood matters more than the meat, arguing over hickory, pecan or oak, while shoulders and ribs slowly soak up smoke above the coals. Backyard pits and roadside shacks share the same slow cook rule. If you can rush it, it isn't real Arkansas barbecue, so hours on the fire become part of the taste. Many places still stack pork straight onto paper-lined trays, where sauce runs down fingers, and kids learn that licking your hands after a good rib is practically part of the recipe. City workers, bikers, and travellers off the interstate end up shoulder to shoulder at lunch counters, swapping stories while chewing through piles of smoky pulled pork. New spots add modern decor and creative sides, but the old rule still helps you choose. If you smell wood smoke in the parking lot, you're probably about to order something good. Once the last rib bone hits the tray, many hands reach straight for fried dill pickles, thin rounds of dill that swap their cold, briny bite for a crispy coat and a soft, hot centre. The snack began here when a drive-in owner dipped pickle slices in batter and fried them, giving leftover dill spears a tasty new purpose. Today, baskets of this snack appear everywhere, from small town festivals to big city sports bars, as one roadside idea wins fans far beyond its hometown. Fried dill pickles tell a fun kitchen story, and Devil's Den adds the wild sequel, with stone cracks, caves, and forest paths waiting under the Boston Mountains. Here, water slipped into tiny lines in the sandstone and slowly widened them, splitting whole rock faces into narrow crevices and cave-like passages you can step through. Some gaps squeeze close around your shoulders, while others open into cool shelters, where kids joke that the rock is playing maze with anyone who keeps walking. In a few crevice caves, cold air spills out even on hot days, turning simple cracks into natural air vents that feel like built-in cooling spots. After dark, bats and small animals use these caves and ledges like hidden roads as they move along the slopes without stepping into bright, open spaces. Beyond those carved walls and shadowed passageways stands Lee Creek Dam, a CCC stone project that created a lake and still shapes how people gather and play at Devil's Den. Built rock by rock from native stone, the dam holds back the water and sends a broad waterfall spilling over its face, like a curtain of foam. On warm days, kids, anglers and hikers watch the sheet of water from below, while fish, turtles and birds use the calm lake above as a shared resting and feeding spot. The gentle streams above and soft woods around the dam give the summer tanager exactly what it likes. High branches for perching, and plenty of insects to snatch in mid-air. male looks almost unreal against the forest, glowing red from head to tail, while the female wears softer yellow-olive tones, like a forest camouflaged version of the same bird. From those perches, it watches patiently before shooting out to grab bees and wasps, calmly banging them against a branch to remove the stinger before swallowing. Between hunts, it pours out a clear, sweet song from mid-level branches, sounding a bit like a robin with a brighter summer tune. When the warm season ends, this traveller heads far south for winter, using the Ozark Woods as just one stop along a much longer sky route. As that bright song fades into the trees, faint wing beats take over, and cabbage white butterflies drift in and out of the forest, like tiny white notes written in the air. They favour sunny gaps, fluttering low over grass and flowers, then slipping back toward the shade in soft, bouncy zigzags that look almost like a slow, careful dance. The wings seem plain at first, mostly white with a few dark spots, but a closer look shows fine dust and pollen on their bodies from all the short landings on leaves and petals. Instead of chasing other animals, they focus on plants, laying eggs on cabbage and mustard leaves so the caterpillars can chew through tender greens like tiny, hungry lawnmowers. This gentle flyer still faces danger, with birds and spiders watching every bright clearing for a white flutter that hangs in one spot a little too long. Farther south, butterflies give way to stories of the Allen House, a grand Victorian home whose tragic past made it one of Arkansas's most talked about haunted places. Behind the ghost stories lies a real family tragedy, the loss of a young woman, long linked to heartbreak and poison, followed by years of reports of strange sounds and late-night figures. Visitors now walk past carved wood, tall windows and old furniture, getting a clear look at how well-off Arkansans once lived, dressed and hosted guests in the 19th century. After all that heaviness, the land offers up something refreshingly simple. Natural dam, where a low rock shelf turns a running creek into a neat, even line of small waterfalls. The sandstone ledge stretches across the whole creek, so from the bank it looks like a perfect stone wall, someone built by hand, even though it's completely natural. Early settlers liked it enough to borrow its name, calling the nearby community Natural Dam, a town whose identity comes straight from the rock and the water instead of from a founder. On warm days, families wade below the falls, while others gather on the flat rock above, where one simple ledge serves as both a swimming hole and a meeting spot. During high water, that straight row of falls grows louder and rougher, showing that this dam is simply creek and sandstone, holding this shape for now. Mountain Fork Creek is the constant engineer here, slowly shaving away at the sandstone until a clean rock ledge and a tidy line of waterfalls appear. Local families tell stories of the creek choosing who gets a safe swim, because it can flip from calm, shallow trickles to loud churning falls after a single hard rain. Farmers downstream have long watched its flow, knowing that the mud and runoff it sends toward the delta helped feed cotton fields in places like the cotton plant. Cotton grew up around those fields, with homes, small shops, and even school calendars shaped by when the cotton was planted, picked and hauled away. Old rail lines and dirt roads once carried little but cotton and people, and every bale helped make the town a busy stop for work and trade. The town may be smaller now, but cotton still shapes its stories, especially when you follow those old rail lines and farm roads toward the calmer waters of De Grey Lake. It began as a flood control project on the Caddo River, yet it quickly turned into a magnet for cabins, campgrounds and lakefront jobs. Families who once relied on timber or row crops now guide fishing trips, rent boats and run small marinas, earning a living from clear water instead of dusty fields. On busy summer days, the lake feels like a floating neighbourhood, with anglers, paddlers, swimmers, and scuba divers, all using the same broad blue surface. That crowded, lively water also attracts a skilled hunter that watches from above, a bird perfectly built for diving after fish, the osprey. It looks almost two-tone, with dark brown wings on top, a bright white belly, and a bold stripe through each eye that makes it seem like it's wearing a mask. But the real secret lies in its feet, with curved claws and rough, spiky pads that work like tiny grips to hold slippery fish. When a fish comes into view, it often hovers in place, eyes locked on the surface below, then suddenly folds its wings and drops straight toward its target. It hits the water feet first with a sharp splash, sometimes vanishing for a moment, before bursting back out with a fish clamped tight. Unlike many other birds of prey, the osprey is a true fish specialist, rarely chasing anything else, and treating open water as one big dinner plate. Even with a heavy catch, its long, narrow wings help it lift off, gliding away while the fish dangles from its talons like a takeout meal. Back at the nest, parents trade off bringing fish, and young birds learn to grab food fast because hungry brothers and sisters sit close and every meal feels like a race. As the seasons change, many travel between large lakes and coasts, stopping to rest and rebuild their strength with fresh fish along the way. They are not the only animals drawn to calm, sheltered water, though. Ducks also gather there to feed and nest, including one of the most familiar of all, the mallard. A male looks dressed for a party with a shiny green head, bright yellow bill, and a crisp white ring around his neck that jumps out from the crowd. While the female wears soft brown, speckled feathers, a natural camouflage coat that helps her disappear into reeds and grass while she guards eggs and ducklings. Both birds carry a bright blue patch on their wings, hidden when they rest, but flashing like a small flag whenever they fly or flap. Their wide orange feet act like little paddles, pushing them smoothly through shallow water, while their bodies stay steady on top. Mallards feed by tipping forward with tails in the air, reaching down with their bills to scoop up seeds, plants and tiny animals from just below the surface. They change their diet with ease, eating grain from fields one day, and soft water plants or insects the next, so they fit into many kinds of places. A mother guides her ducklings in a neat line, and they copy her every move, where she swims, when she hides, and how she pecks along the shore. Many mallards travel between lakes, rivers and ponds over the year, so a sheltered cove can feel like a favourite rest stop where they pause and refuel before flying on. The calm coves and friendly ducks feel a world away from crowds, yet not so far from another kind of Arkansas getaway that has gone quiet. Dogpatch, USA. It began as a cartoon town built around that Lil Abner comic strip, where visitors met costume characters, rode oddball rides, and wandered streets designed to look like a hillbilly village. Crowds faded as big new parks appeared and travel habits changed, and Dogpatch, USA slid into debt until the gates closed and the laughter stopped. Empty buildings, rusting ride tracks and peeling signs now sit among the trees, like a paused scene that shows just how big Arkansas once dreamed its road trip tourism could be. Elsewhere in the state, two completely different worlds run straight into each other. Cane Creek State Park sits where rolling forest and flat delta lowlands meet, so a short walk can take someone from dry pine woods to muddy, tree-filled water. Boardwalks and trails cross wetlands that look very close to what early settlers would have seen before big farms, drainage ditches, and logging changed much of the region. In remote backwaters, cypress knees stick up from the mud and owls call from the branches, and some locals say this is where the old delta still breathes. This patchwork of swamp, shady woods and open water reveals a side of the state rarely seen on postcards, even though it helped shape how people farmed, travelled and told stories. Those stories pick up more jokes and tall tales as the road heads back into the Ozarks, toward a legendary roadside stop built on humour and folklore. Booger Hollow Outpost. It greeted travellers with hand-painted signs full of goofy bragging and hillbilly math, where the parking lot doubled as a stage for local humour. Inside the trading post, locals told yarns about boogers in nearby hollows, ghosts, odd lights and mystery sounds, then winked and sold you a postcard about it. The famous double-decker outhouse was part joke, part photo prop, and a nod to the local habit of laughing at themselves first. On busy days, the gift shop felt like a live radio show, with tall tales bouncing between clerks and visitors, each person trying to top the last story. All that talk and laughter spills back onto the highway, riding along with old Ozark tales toward another legend that shaped this region, the White River. It threads past pale rock cliffs, green hills, and wide flat bottoms, so every bend feels like a fresh cut through the Ozarks. On bright days, the surface may look smooth from far away, but up close cold, clear currents slide over stone and steadily carve new paths. Small towns, fishing cabins, and riverside lodges cluster along its banks, where morning mist lifts off the water and hills stack up behind it like soft blue steps. Sandbars, rock shelves, and side channels break the main flow into calmer pockets, giving birds, boats, and fish their own small corners along the river. Arkansas's trout fishing tradition grew around those tailwaters, with guides, marinas and resorts built on early morning floats, tall stories and fish sizzling in pans. Locals say the river now powers 3 kinds of work at once: tackle shops, boat ramps and kitchen tables, all tied to the pull of trout on the line. That pull often ends with a sudden flash of silver and pink in the net, the calling card of the river's star cold water fish, the rainbow trout. Although they seem right at home today, rainbow trout are visitors rather than natives, with their original rivers lying far to the west before they found a place in Arkansas's White River. Their success here comes from an unusual twist of engineering, as dams release chilly water from the bottom of big reservoirs and transform once warm currents into trout-friendly streams. In that clear, cold flow, a bright band of red or pink runs along each side, like a painted stripe on a silver fish that seems to say, "You found the main character." They hold position behind rocks and logs in fast water, then burst out to snatch drifting insects or small fish with quick, precise strikes. Those strong, flexible bodies also make them famous fighters on a fishing line, and many anglers secretly hope for a long, wild tug of war before the net finally scoops them up. Drawn by that unusual mix of western trout, the hills, and human-made cold water, people travel from across the country for the chance to land one. High up a winding mountain backroad, cold tailwater stories turn into tales of families and timber in a tucked-away Ozark crossroads called Ork. It is so small that its historic general store feels like the whole town centre, a wood-front building where mail, gossip, coffee and music fill one room. As nearby farms and homesteads faded, the store kept going, acting as cafe, gas stop, and meeting spot for hunters, bikers, hikers, and locals who still call these ridges home. Inside, old photos, hand-painted signs, and worn shelves turn a quick stop for bread or a soda into a short walk through decades of Ozark stories. The menu became a legend of its own, with travellers coming for big burgers, possum pie, and a tall tale from someone just down the gravel road. That busy room full of burgers and stories is followed by hushed trails and swampy pools at Slough Wildlife Management Area. It protects a patch of flooded forest and slow water that looks very close to the bottomland hardwoods that once covered huge areas of eastern Arkansas. Those bottomland hardwood forests stretched across a broad, soggy plain where trees, water and mud created both hunting grounds and natural pantries for nearby families. As farms, levees and highways spread, many of those forests were cut or drained, leaving only scattered patches where ducks, deer, fish and songbirds still live together. Many families say places like this feel like old Arkansas, preserving a way of life that has disappeared from much of the state. Here, though, the water still spills into trees, the ground still goes soft under boots, and migrating birds still treat the slough like a motel and grocery store combined. Seasonal flooding changes the scene again and again, with winter waters pulling in ducks and geese, and spring mud waking up insects, songbirds and hungry fish. Among those tall, wet-footed trees, one big bird adds its own drama, hammering so hard that the sound carries through the forest. The pileated woodpecker. This bird is almost as big as a crow, with black feathers, white neck stripes, and a tall red crest that makes it look like it's wearing a bright helmet. That oversized bill works like a chisel, smashing into dead trunks so hard that chunks of wood spray out and land in piles at the base. Inside the wood, the main targets are carpenter ants and beetle grubs, which it finds by cutting large, square-shaped holes into rotten trees and stumps. To reach them, a long sticky tongue slides into those holes to snag insects that most other birds could never reach. Meanwhile, strong claws and stiff tail feathers brace the bird against the trunk, where the tree serves as both workbench and dining table. Before it ever comes into view, its loud, wild call, almost like laughter, often rings through the wet woods at Slough. Even after it flies away, old nest holes in big trees become apartments for other animals, with wood ducks, owls and small mammals moving into the cavities it leaves behind. All that noise and carving happens under the trees, where the red-shouldered hawk scans the ground and water for its next meal. This medium-sized hunter has warm, reddish bars across its chest, dark wings, and bold black and white bands on its tail that show clearly when it flies over Slough. True to its name, rusty patches on the upper wings give its shoulders a reddish tint, helping birdwatchers tell it apart from other forest hawks at a glance. From a high perch, it watches the wet ground for frogs, snakes, mice, and small birds to move, before dropping in a fast, sharp dive. Rather than patrolling wide open fields like some hawks, this forest specialist weaves between trunks and over pools, with tight turns that help it follow prey through the trees. Its menu changes with opportunity, so a single hawk may catch a mouse 1 hour and a frog or small snake the next. Even its voice stands out, with a loud, repeated Kia scream that is sometimes used as a woodland sound effect in movies because it feels so wild and classic. Those flooded trees and calm channels are also home to the wood duck, a colourful bird that glides between logs and stumps in the slough. The male is a living painting, with a glossy green and purple head, sharp white face lines, a red eye, and a chest full of vivid browns and patterns. By contrast, the female wears softer grey-brown tones with a neat white ring around her eye, colours that help her disappear against cypress trunks as she watches the nest. When nesting season arrives, wood ducks do what few others attempt, choosing tree holes high above the ground, where ducklings start life with a leap into air, earth, or water. Tiny feet with sharp claws help both adults and ducklings climb into these cavities, where the flooded forest at Slough becomes a treetop nursery. Once on the water, they dabble along the edges of pools and creeks, feeding on acorns, seeds, insects, and small aquatic animals, shifting between plant food and protein with the seasons. Not far behind, a mother leads a tight line of ducklings through the slough, each copying her every move, paddling, hiding, and pecking among roots and fallen branches. Calm forest water and busy duck families feel a world away from another kind of Arkansas river life, preserved in old buildings at Powhatan Historic State Park. It once worked as a busy port on the Black River, where steamboats tied up at the landing, unloaded cargo, and dropped off travellers into a lively river town. Churches, shops, and houses line the streets, all depending on the river like a main road, because boats carried news, tools, and supplies faster than horse-drawn travel. When rail lines and later highways passed it by, river traffic slowed, and the town's busy days faded, its buildings left like a set after the show was over. Old boat routes feel far away once the road reaches Lake Fort Smith State Park, a mountain reservoir that stands as a starting point for exploring the Boston Mountains. Here, the lake lies in a steep, forested valley, ringed by ridges that once made crossing western Arkansas slow and tiring for wagons and early cars. Those hills could turn a short trip into an all-day journey, leaving much of the region almost cut off from the rest of the state. Today, the park welcomes visitors into the surrounding hills, with trailheads leading straight from the shore onto long paths across the high ground. Among them, the Ozark Highlands Trail begins at the reservoir before stretching far into its interior. Instead, around the lake, cabins, campsites and a visitor centre stand where difficult mountain crossings once discouraged travel, drawing visitors for fishing, paddling and mountain biking. Along those same shores, stony edges and thin patches of sand become home to the killdeer, a busy shorebird that relies on speed and clever acting to protect its eggs. This bird wears bold face paint, with a brown back, white belly, 2 dark bands across its chest, and a bright orange rump that flashes like a warning light when it moves. When danger comes too close, it suddenly drops a wing, limps away, and cries loudly, acting so hurt that the intruder follows the injured bird instead of the nest. As soon as the threat moves away, the bird snaps out of its act, stands tall, and races back to its eggs, where the fake accident has done its job. Adults shout sharp, kill deer calls that carry over Lake Fort Smith, and they are so noisy they can feel like feathered alarm systems guarding the shore. While racing along the ground, they snap up insects, beetles and small creatures, cleaning up bugs as they patrol the open spaces around the water. The noisy show on the shoreline soon has company, as a blue, bold and curious jay watches from the woods, ready to add its own voice. At first glance, this bird wears a bright blue coat with clean white patches and sharp black lines, like it is dressed up just so no one at Lake Fort Smith could miss it. It is just as noticeable by sound. Loud JJ calls warn other birds about danger, and it can copy hawks and other sounds, so one jay can sound like half the forest. That sharp mind appears again at mealtime, as it stuffs seeds, nuts and acorns into a throat pouch and hides them away, where the forgotten acorns often grow into new oak trees. That same cleverness helps this forager quickly find crumbs and scraps around cabins and campsites, with wild instincts and snack-stealing tricks that would impress any raccoon. Meanwhile, families stay busy in the branches, with adults fiercely guarding nests and teaming up to chase away hawks, crows, and even cats that get too close. Close by, young jays watch and listen from the leaves, learning calls, warning signals, and food-finding shortcuts, so each new bird becomes a better reader of the forest around the area. As the seasons change, some move to find better food, while others stay put, keeping the park loud and busy even when many birds fall silent. The blue jays show in the trees soon meets another performer over the marsh, a red-winged blackbird whose glowing red shoulders flash above the wet ground. A male is glossy black, but when he leans forward and spreads his wings, bright red and yellow shoulder patches flare like tiny warning badges over the reeds. Tall cattails and grasses around the park become his stage, and he belts out a rough metallic conch-la-ree song that dares any rival to step closer. During breeding season, one strong male may hold territory with several females, patrolling the marsh like a small feathered landlord, guarding every corner of his wet field. Females look brown and heavily streaked, almost like a different bird, and they slip into the plants to weave nests low over water, hiding eggs from hungry eyes. If a person or predator walks too close, males often swoop at heads and shoulders, proving that this is one bird that treats every nest area like a no trespassing zone. They eat insects and other small invertebrates in the warmer months, then shift to seeds and waste grain from weeds and farm fields when it gets colder. Many birds from farther north migrate south and join winter flocks in Arkansas, while local birds from central and southern states often stay year-round and simply move around to find food. The busy chorus of blackbirds leads to crafted rockwork and still pools, where the old mill stands like a storybook, building made to catch every visitor's eye. This mill was designed to look worn and old, yet never grind a single grain, built more like a giant movie prop than a working machine. Its stone walls and wooden wheel appear in the opening scenes of Gone with the Wind, making this corner of North Little Rock, Arkansas's most famous movie landmark. Visitors still travel here to stand where that classic shot was filmed, lining up wedding photos, school pictures, and travel selfies under the very arches the cameras once loved. On soft spring evenings, bright migrants drop into the nearby trees and gardens, including the rose-breasted growbeak, a bold traveller that adds fresh colour to this carefully staged setting. The male looks like someone painted a red triangle on his chest, with black wings and a white belly, while the female almost seems like a different bird, wearing soft brown and white streaks. Their heavy cone-shaped beaks crush tough seeds like tiny nutcrackers, but they also grab insects and soft fruit, so every stop becomes a quick mixed menu feast. Each migration run is a moving chain of rest spots and feeding areas, and one of the human hubs along that chain is Harrison, a town built around nearby farms and hills. The railroad turned it into a go-to market town, where families from far-off hollows spent whole days buying supplies, selling cattle, and seeing a doctor in one trip. Livestock, dairy, timber, limestone, and marble flowed through its depots and warehouses before heading to bigger cities. For many mountain communities, going to town meant coming here, and people still joke that if you cannot find what you need in Harrison, you probably do not really need it. Clinics, a regional hospital, and job offices now make it a support hub for tens of thousands of residents, packing healthcare, training, and work links into one compact city. The town also faces a hard history and a reputation tied to racism, and community task forces, events, and new campaigns try to push the story toward a more open future. Festivals, farm sales, and small businesses draw locals and visitors alike, where everyday errands meet regional tourism. Highways that pass through Harrison keep rolling toward a bigger Ozark city, where classrooms, labs, and theatres share the same hillsides, Fayetteville. What began as a frontier stop grew into a busy university town, as the hilltop campus drew students and teachers from far away and made its streets an ideal factory for Arkansas. Growth around the campus brought homes, shops, and music venues, so a short walk takes you from research labs to food, guitars, and late-night conversations. Game days raise the energy even higher as huge crowds pour in and the whole town feels like one giant outdoor living room. Artists and entrepreneurs ride the wave, opening galleries, tech startups, and creative studios that show you can build big ideas from a base on Ozark Hills. Downtown brick blocks now stand beside modern glass and steel, and some residents joke you can see the town's past and future just by turning your head. Many people say the city breathes with the school calendar, packed one week calmer the next, as semesters, festivals, and research seasons roll through like their own kind of weather. This steady pulse of ideas, art, and visitors helped Fayetteville grow from a frontier outpost into a regional crossroads, where new music, food, and inventions arrive as often as the buses. At the centre of that story stands the institution that powered it, the University of Arkansas, a flagship campus that still shapes much of modern Arkansas life. Its sidewalks double as a living record, etched with thousands of graduate names, and students carefully avoid stepping on their own too soon. Inside its classrooms and labs, research helped fuel the state's poultry boom and trained minds that built retail networks reaching far beyond the state. That legacy carries into downtown Fayetteville, gathering around the Washington County Historic Courthouse at the core of civic life. Thick brick walls, heavy stone arches, and a tall clock tower give this Romanesque courthouse a tough, almost fortress-like face. Courtrooms inside heard bitter disputes over land, power, and local rules, where the county's future was often argued. Steps outside have been filled with protesters, musicians, and speakers, using the old courthouse as a backdrop for loud arguments and big community moments. Today, the building stands as both a working seat of county business and a favourite stop on history walks, where guides point out its arches and share their best courthouse tales. After the noise of public debates here, Fayetteville National Cemetery waits nearby, holding stories of service and sacrifice. Straight rows of white headstones stretch across the hill, and even young visitors can see it looks like one last formation. Flags and small tokens placed on certain graves turn plain stone markers into clear personal thank you notes across time. Military funerals and Memorial Day gatherings bring the slow, clear notes of taps over the grounds, and for those few moments the entire cemetery seems to hold its breath. Stories shared here about long deployments, close calls, and friendships that outlasted war make the place feel as much like a patient listener as a burial site. Some storytellers talk about uniforms seen at twilight among the graves, though most visitors say the strongest feeling here is calm respect, not fear. As dusk settles over the cemetery, many people look toward Mount Sequoia, a high forested spine that overlooks Fayetteville and its rolling countryside. Its overlook, houses, streets, farm fields, and the University of Arkansas campus spread out below like pieces on a huge table. The ridge began as a Methodist retreat, so cabins, lodges, and meeting halls share space with lawns and tall trees on about 30 acres. Wind carries voices, bells, and city sounds up the slope, where everyday noise meets the rustle of leaves in a way that feels both calm and busy at once. Weddings, camps, art events, and community meetings now use this high ground as neutral territory, a place where big plans are discussed with the town literally spread out below. That tradition of building peaceful spaces above town continues at Cooper Chapel, a woodland church that seems to fold the forest into its walls. Wooden ribs and steel arches rise in tight rows, crossing overhead so the interior feels like standing inside a stylized grove of trees. Tall glass panels replace heavy walls, so trunks, leaves and sky stay visible from every seat, and the chapel never fully closes the door on the woods outside. For many, this chapel becomes a starting point for seeing Arkansas differently, where its forest-framed walls naturally give way to the broad waters of Lake Dardanelle. This calm reservoir hides a major change to the river, where locks and dams turned it into a working waterway that links inland towns to national and global shipping routes. Long towboats push chains of barges across the lake's surface, each loaded with rock, grain or fuel, bound for ports hundreds of miles away. Around those shipping lanes, wetlands, still backwaters, and small islands give space to herons, turtles, wintering bald eagles, and many fish species, all sharing the reservoir. Fishing tournaments and fishing with heroes fill the shoreline with boats, while park staff lead eagle tours and monitor water quality. Nearby river towns shifted as navigation, a lakeside nuclear plant, and recreation businesses brought jobs to docks, boat ramps and energy facilities instead of just farms and rail yards. As barges move across the lake for trade, Boonville Sanatorium recalls a time when people moved in the opposite way, off busy routes and into quiet hills to fight tuberculosis. It functioned like its own town, with dorms, dining rooms and long porches where rows of beds were rolled outside so fresh air could be part of every treatment day. Doctors relied on rest, outdoor air, strict diets, and even harsh lung surgeries, asking patients to stay for months or years while their lives ran on hospital schedules instead of normal time. Extended stays led to friendships, routines, and small traditions inside the gates, and some visitors now say the old buildings feel heavy with habit and whispered stories. Life inside the sanatorium revolved around porches and wards, but life outside kept flowing, much like the Mulberry River that runs free through forested valleys nearby. This stream cuts through narrow canyons and past bluff walls, dropping over ledges and shoals that paddlers enjoy precisely because no big dams sit upstream to slow its current. Conservation groups and agencies watch flow levels, bank erosion, and water quality, working together to keep this river's wild and scenic status from becoming just a label on paper. Thick woods along the banks help hold soil, shade the channel, and create long travel corridors, tying the health of the river directly to the strength of the forest around it. These protected forests also give shade, berries, and safe routes to one of the biggest locals here, the black bear, padding along the river corridor. Its fur forms a thick, dark coat, and when it stands, it can match a grown person in height, with small eyes, round ears, and long claws that quickly erase any teddy bear illusion. Out in these woods, one eats like a roaming buffet fan, switching between berries, nuts, insects, fish, and dead animals, depending on what each season drops on the ground. A powerful nose guides each step, letting it smell fruit trees, hidden grubs, or camp leftovers from far away, so finding food is more sniffing than hunting. Cold months bring long naps in snug dens under roots or rocks, while stored fat provides the energy for missed meals. Most bears here prefer to stay out of sight, slipping through brush so smoothly that many nearby families never realise such a heavyweight shares their hills. At the edge of all that bear country sits a tiny town that feels like the whole of the Ozarks poured into a single square. Narrow roads curl in from different hollows, so the town square, school and churches became key meeting spots for families spread across the valleys. On busy days, ranch trucks, river guides and kids in muddy boots all share a few blocks, and quick errands often turn into long chats. Small diners and shops pass on local recipes and stories, mixing talk of pie contests with tales about floods, bears and wild days on the Buffalo River. While life here moves slowly in the hills, traffic and trade surge across the Memphis-Arkansas Bridge, a huge arch jumping the Mississippi River. Long lines of trucks and cars roll over its steel frame every day, carrying food, fuel, and vacation gear between the flat river plains and the busy city beyond. Underneath, barge strings glide along the Mississippi like train cars on water, while this crossing anchors the South's travel and shipping network. High water, wind and fog have all tested drivers here, yet the bridge still stands as a trusted high road over one of the widest working rivers in the country. For many families, crossing this span feels like a small adventure. One moment the signs read Arkansas, and a short drive later they welcome you to Tennessee and the journey ahead. This is Arkansas, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of the Tennessee, check out this video.